In Rehmeyer's time, there were hundreds of informal powwow practitioners throughout this area. One was named John Blymyer, a sickly and sad man from a family of Brockers who traced their spiritual lineage back to Pennsylvania's most famous witch, Mountain Mary. But John Blymyer could keep none of his powwow patience. He was reduced to working in a York cigar factory. He could figure out no explanation for his hardship, save perhaps the answer obvious to someone of his background. He must have been hexed. Welcome back to the Well House Exorcism. This is your ghost of a host with the most, Shanna.
Howdy.
Howdy, 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 howdy.
I'm PJ.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you like Toy Story?
Darn right I do.
Of course you do. Which is your favorite? 1, 2, or 3?
1.
My favorite is...
Don't say 4.
Is there a 4?
It's the terrible one.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we think it's terrible.
I forget. That one doesn't even exist. In my head, 1, 2, or 3. I was going to say the
that
spooky
one deserves
one.
an
The
episode
short.
on here.
Oh, man.
The spooky one's good.
I love that one.
The
Combat
Christmas
Carl.
special, too.
That one's good, too. You're right. All right, we're back here for the murder house hex murder stuff. I'm sick. So that was an intro.
Those were words.
So I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to edit that out. I need mom's drink. If we go back to those.
The drink.
I need
We
the drink. I'm so sick. Anyway, we're here for the Hex House Murder Part 2. There we go. Now I got it.
Hey.
I'm so proud of myself. So last time we were here, what did we talk about? Recap for me because I'm literally sick. I can't remember.
Well, we talked about powwow medicine.
True.
And what that entails and how it's like an active prayer is what they believe. And it can only be taught from man to woman or woman to man unless you're teaching to a table.
Or a piano.
Because that totally gives this whole belief system legitimacy right there.
Hey.
Sorry, like I was open to the
now.
idea of powwowing until I heard that. I was like, what?
That's extreme equality is what I call it. Oh boy, you're right. And we kind of talked a little bit about Nelson Rehmeyer and John Blymyer because they're going to be really important for this part of the story. So let's start by talking about Nelson Rehmeyer. Because he's the dude who's going to get did here.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, cool. So he was born in 1868. This is several decades after the first Rehmeyers came here in Pennsylvania in the 1840s, just so you know. He was a farmer, primarily potatoes, which I think Eli would appreciate.
Yes, he would.
Yes. Now, people called him a hermit and a recluse when they heard that he had been killed, but that actually isn't really true. He was a homebody. And if we watch the documentary, they kind of go over it too. He was a really well-known powwower. All day and night, people were knocking on his doors. So it wasn't that he was a hermit, it's just that he was always at home because he was always needed. To the point where his wife, Alice, went to her family home across the hill instead because she couldn't take being woken up in the middle of the night.
I'll just stay in my bed across the way.
With the kids. You stay in your own house, honey. I think it's interesting. And I guess they would meet up for laundry drop-offs and stuff.
Yeah. And you hear about married couples who sleep in separate bedrooms and things like that, but
different houses
yeah,
too
different
here.
houses is something else.
I'm just leaving you. But he was well known to be helpful because again, he was a powwower, not a hex doctor. So he was actually a really, really good person.
Which is saying something because that's something that I didn't know is that powwowers were a dime a dozen. There are a lot of people practicing this in the early 1900s. So for him to stand out above the rest shows that, people respected him and
he got it done.
Yeah. Whatever he did, it definitely had an effect on them.
He must have had the drink. Man, Nelson,
that's it.
I could use the drink right now. Let me tell you. So John Blymyer, very different. Now, according to some sources, he was a pretty good powwower. Others, he was not. So really, I'm going to go with the he was not because it kind of fits the story better. So I think he may have had some good moments.
Yeah.
And he was a good powwower in moments. But I think he was overshadowed by some kind of psychosis. And
the documentary, there's a documentary, by the way, that's made by a Pennsylvanian. You know, you get to meet a lot of the Rehmeyers and what was his name?
John.
John's family.
Mm-hmm.
Like you meet a lot of them too. And they all attest that he probably had some kind of learning disability as well. He was a little slower than others.
And they said that they wonder if he was like insane in some way, because they didn't know what words to use, but there is a history of like mental disease throughout their family, so they're thinking that that's probably what's going on with him. You know, not that he didn't believe it, he thought he was hexed. Obviously. But anyway, he was also a power practitioner, as I mentioned. He was born in York County in 1895, so he's younger than Nelson. So depending on the stories that you read, he is great or not great. Now, the one big story that I mentioned to you was, of course, the dog, the rabbit dog.
Yes.
Right? So
tell us that story.
Oh, I'll get to it.
Oh,
all right.
Okay.
So he did have an excellent reputation as being a powwower at this time period because of the dog. But no matter how good he was as a powwower, he thought there was just this shadow hanging over him. Again, like he thought it was a hex. So since he couldn't, I mentioned before in the last episode, you couldn't be a full-time powwower. You had to have another job on the side. So he could not make ends meet just being a powwower. So he worked at the cigar factory, as I'd mentioned. So one day he's leaving the cigar factory and everybody can see this rabid dog coming at him. They're getting freaked out because he's pretty rabid.
It's a rabid dog.
But according to all the stories, and there's like multiple accounts of this, so it had to actually have happened. Blymyer approaches the dog. He says something to it. No one knows what he says. And then after that, the foaming mouth ended. He patted on its head. It became very subdued and kind of happy to see him. And Blymyer went off, kind of walked away, and the dog followed him for a while. So I think it's interesting that this dog obviously is rabid.
Yeah, right.
Stops foaming at the mouth somehow, and then decides to follow him. He's all happy.
Maybe he paid someone to squirt toothpaste in the dog's mouth.
There it is. It's Just Friends. I can't believe she's got toothpaste. I have blueberries. Guess what's going on there? Oh, I don't know. They never mentioned the dog after that, though, so I'm not sure if it went back to being rabid.
Or best of luck to you.
Or if they did
Shoo-shoo.
Another example is To Kill a Mockingbird. When he got Atticus shooting the rabid dog. Did that happen later? We don't know. But for those couple of minutes that Blymyer was there, it was fine. But after that, he did become ill again. And that's when he started believing that there was another practitioner out there putting a hex on him. Now, on a different note, he was married. Okay, so let's go back to the happy. He does move away after the dog thing because his luck begins to change once he gets that hex kind of taken away from him. Because it does say here, John Blymyer was doomed to his hex and started to waste away. One night, however, Blymyer had a feeling he knew who hexed him. It was his great-grandfather Jacob. Since he could not fight a spirit's hex, he decided to move away from his home, which seemed to help cure the curse. No, it wasn't malnutrition. It was my great-granddaddy who is dead, hexed me. Anyway, so he met Lily. They marry. They have 2 children, but both those babies die in infancy, which is sad. So having those tragedies leads John to once again believe that he is hexed or still hexed and it hasn't gone away. He starts becoming incredibly suspicious. I would say to the point that's almost like schizophrenic.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking too when I heard about all the symptoms and everything, that it sounds like schizophrenia.
And he would
the idea of something looming over you all the time,
and they're always there watching, to the point where Lily actually is afraid for her life because the way that he's acting out in the house and everywhere else. So she consults a lawyer and she's able to actually get him put into a mental hospital. Now this is the 1800s, early 1900s. That's surprising, because women didn't have as many rights as they do now. So what I find interesting though is he's sent to Harrisburg State Hospital, which we've already had an episode on, and the website paints a pretty picture, but apparently John was able to just leave. He just walks away. He was there for 48 days and then he just walks away.
Yeah.
And no one really thinks, oh, wait, let's go check on our patient. Where are the record keepers? But what's interesting, they didn't mention this in the documentary, that was 25 miles from his home. He walked all the way back home.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm so amazed.
A literal marathon.
Yes. That's how far he walks. Yeah. So it's crazy to me that, again, like that, oh, Harrisburg State Hospital, you can paint whatever picture you want, but you letting people walk out? Mm-mm. All right. But anyway, so he goes back to the cigar factory and he works there for a little while. But at that point, the curse is just getting so bad. You know what I'm saying? It's just awful.
Yeah.
So he goes and visits the River Witch of Marietta, Nellie Knoll. She identified Blymyer's enemy as none other than Nelson Rehmeyer. Even though they were all family friends. No. And so, like, in his mind, it's all coming full circle. Oh, I knew it. Right. I knew from the beginning. Initially, though, the one story that was in the documentary too is she's not sure which one of the Rehmeyer family it is. So she puts money in his hand, and she said, when you lift this up, you'll see a face in your hand. Whoever that person is you see in the hand of you will be the guy that is doing it. Lifts up the money, and he sees the face of Nelson, and so that is how he realizes it's Nelson. It's because he sees it in his hand.
Right.
I believe it. Not at all. But anyway.
Totally not schizophrenic behavior in any way. Not
at all. So she says, all you need to do is get his copy of the long lost friend and a lock of his hair and bury it 6 feet underground, and then you're good.
Yep.
That totally makes sense too.
Yep. Long Lost Friend, for those who don't remember, is the quote-unquote spell book, the powwow book that they use.
Yes, it was typed when it wasn't supposed to be typed. It's always confusing. Anywho. So he knows now he has to go find that book, and he's got to cut off a lock of Nelson Rehmeyer's hair. So I feel like if you're a powwower and, you want to go talk to somebody, couldn't you just be like, listen, I know you're hexing me. Can I have your book and a lock of your hair?
Yeah.
I feel like from what I've learned of Nelson would be like, yeah, sure, clip, here's a book, have fun. Like, whatever, get out of my house. No, absolutely not. Because murder has to happen instead. So shall we get into the murder?
Let's do it.
All right. So while he's working at the factory, he met 2 other people who also believed that they were suffering because they'd been hexed. One was a 14-year-old named John Curry. Like, imagine like a teenager, like an 8th grader, 9th grader. Oh, I'm cursed. He was actually also trapped in an abusive household. So I think there's a lot of like mental disease there. Like for him, it's like PTSD. But he thought there was a malevolent force like causing all this trouble at home. Like if they weren't hexed, it wouldn't be happening. People wouldn't be abusive. Another person was Milton Hess, who is discussed a couple times in the documentary as well. His wife, Alice, they had both been very prosperous until 1926 when, of course, the witches started hexing his farm because all the cows stopped producing milk. And all the crops started to fail. Yep, they lost a lot of money. Witches.
Yep.
What can you do?
Witches be crazy.
Yeah. Couldn't be that the animals were not getting fat or stressed, and it couldn't be, some kind of disease. No. So when he was talking to Blymyer, he's like, oh yeah, I got a hex on me too. It's good, I gotta understand. So anyway, he's already gone to the River Witch of Marietta, i.e. Nellie Knoll. She places that $1 bill in his hand. He sees Nelson's face, so he knows he's got to go take care of him. Now, the sad thing is, he actually knows Nelson very well because when he was a kid, he was taken there as a small child, actually. And he was very, very sick. His grandfather and father take him over there, and Rehmeyer heals John as a 5-year-old. It sounds like he actually had malnutrition. That's what I'm going to go with. But again, Nelson actually saved his life. And how I'm going to thank you? I'm going to kill you? It's ridiculous.
Do you think he was planning to when he got there?
I think so. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Something else, too. When Blymyer was 10, he actually went to work on Nelson's farm. And Nelson paid him 25 cents a day to work with the potatoes. So, Nelson actually gave this guy a job, too. Again, Nelson was a nice person. And he's like, no, I'm going to go kill him instead. It's fine. So, anywho... So off they go. So we have John heading off with his little 14-year-old John Curry and Wilbert Hess instead of Milton. And they head on over to do this. Now they go on November 26th. They first go to Alice's house because there's 2 Alices, Milton's wife and then Rehmeyer's wife. And Alice Rehmeyer, she's like, no, Nelson lives over in his own house. I live over here. So go on down the hill and you'll find him in the hollow, in the Rehmeyer Hollow. And they go, okay, cool. So off they go. So she gives them the directions. So she knows all 3 of these dudes are going down to that house. So right away, you're stupid because you now, you've met a woman and she knows that you're going there. And you're the last people that, she sees with her husband for.
You're really telegraphing where you're going and what's going to happen next.
People are idiots. So anyway, they
Terrible alibi.
we left early. So anyway, they go in there, they talk to Rehmeyer for a few minutes, and then like literally they're there like for the whole night, to the point where like they've been talking for a very long time, and Rehmeyer is like, you know, it's really, really late. I don't think you guys should drive home tonight. How about you guys just sleep here and I'll make you breakfast in the morning. Again, he was a really nice dude. And so they're like, okay, sure. So he offers them their sleeping quarters, and they decided that while he was asleep, they would take like, you know, turns looking for the spell book, but they were unable to find the spell book, you know, the long lost friend.
Yep.
They debated on whether or not to try and get a lock of his hair, but they decided that he was too big for them to kind of like hold down and cut the hair. Because Rehmeyer, even though he was like, you know, 60 years old, he was 6'2". And that's when they mentioned, yeah, they mentioned that in the documentary. He was a very, very tall man.
You see his copy of Long Lost Friend too. Just sitting
on
the
bookshelf.
Find, yeah. Pretty easy to find. I don't know what their problem was, but
oh no. So anywho, they decide they're gonna come back then to take care of it, right? So they end up leaving and they come back later, and so that is when all the bad stuff happens. So it is late that night, the night of November 27th, that they return. And you say, like, did he plan to kill him? Well, they come bringing sticks and ropes.
Yeah,
like,
I forgot about the fact that they left and came back.
Yeah. So yeah, they come back with the sticks and ropes. They knock on the door. They tell Rehmeyer, oh, we forgot something here. Like, that was their ruse to get back in the house. And of course, him being nice guy's like, yeah, come on in. I'll help you find it, whatever it is. And they go in.
Bring your sticks.
Bring your sticks and your rope. That's cool. So he'd had no problem them coming in. They all went to the front room, but the thing is, like, Rehmeyer never got like a chance to like fight back, because while his back was turned, they tackle him to the floor.
Yeah, and
that's when they truss him up. They try to. Now, interestingly enough, like when I was doing my research, what I found isn't exactly what was said in the documentary, and so I thought the documentary was actually very helpful for me, because all the articles were like, well, no one really knows what happened. But I'm like, well, there's a lot in the documentary that wasn't in your articles. Do you remember what happened in the documentary?
I only remember the end part of it, not the initial like attack.
Okay. So you can take care of the rest. You hop in when you want to. So, you know, they do have 25 feet of rope and multiple sticks. So they tie him down and then they whack him across the head. And it's Blymyer's choking him to try and keep him like from fighting. And then Curry actually is one who smashes him on the head with a block of wood. So hard that like he like topples to the ground. Like it is bad. And that was actually the fatal blow. It actually basically killed him. He was not completely unconscious. So
thank goodness, considering what comes next.
Yes. Do you want to take over now? So that's what happens there.
Because at this point they set him on fire. And
well, they first ransacked the house looking for the book.
Yeah, looking for the book and everything, and then they set him on fire. And the fire is contained to just like his body. It doesn't spread to the rest of the house. But it burns through the floorboards and a little bit of the support beam, which happened to be right at his hip bone. And so when everyone found him like 2 days later, or the next day.
It was a few days later.
It was a few days later, as I thought. They found his charred body, but hanging like draped around this support
and the thing
beam.
Is he wasn't very charred because of how the floor had broken through. Like they kept saying, oh my gosh, he didn't burn, you know, because which I thought was, they think it's because the blood coming out of his head would have squelched the fire around his body, but you know, not on the floor. And any extra would have, like, you know, leaked down into the potato bin below him in the basement, which is gross. Yeah. That was mentioned in the documentary. I was like, oh, no.
Yeah, but now the house is a museum. I'm sure we'll talk about this a bit more, but and they have like just a glass pane over the charred support beam, and you can look down into the basement.
I thought that was really cool. Again, that's not
that's gruesome, but it's cool.
It's not in the article, but like for me, like it kind of put everything better in context.
Oh, yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, it was definitely a really heavy like murder.
Definitely not an urban myth. Like
this actually happened. Yeah. So yeah, they said like, you know, his body was still there. It wasn't on fire. It actually says here, many locals believe that even in death, Rehmeyer's powwowing powers were strong. That's what kept him from burning. It was his powwowing powers. What the whole thing with Curry whacking him on the head so hard, like he hit him hard enough that he broke poor Rehmeyer's skull, and that caused his bone fragments to cause hemorrhaging in his brain. which is why they thought he was dead.
Yeah.
But he wasn't completely. And so some people have wondered if maybe he did a little bit of like stopped up and roll too. And that's why the fire didn't hit him, because he kind of woke back up. If that's the case, I feel for him. That is just awful.
I mean, yeah, with that kind of like brain swelling and everything too, it could have just been convulsions, like, that made him roll and
seizuring.
Stop the flames that way. So
yeah. What's interesting though is like they're still looking for that book after they've killed him, but once the person who created the hex is dead, the hex is over. So it's like, why are you still looking for the book?
Yeah.
Which is something that like one of the articles was just like why they were looking for it makes no sense because the guy is dead. But anyway.
And it's not like they couldn't just go to a local bookstore and get 5 more copies because they were everywhere.
But it wasn't his.
They needed his for some reason.
Nellie Knoll told him. Yeah. The witch, man, she told him.
Maybe they didn't know that if he died, the hex would end. Maybe
I wonder if you should trust a witch, because they're the ones who make the hexes.
Yeah,
you're gonna go visit the witch who tells you to go kill him.
Yeah.
Thinking about that now. Interesting. But anyway, so they tried to stage the house, so of course they had been broken into. But again, only person that saw was Alice. Like she knows it's three dudes. But anywho. They 2 days later, a neighbor does discover Rehmeyer's body, tells authorities. The crime, of course, stuns the community because he was a great person. Mm-hmm. It took no time at all to pick up Blymyer as a suspect, because Alice saw him and 2 other dudes. And of course, this is 1928, so there's media coverage, and it makes national news. People are going crazy. Because people in Pennsylvania, this is less than 100 years ago, believe in witches. This is ridiculously stupid. And so we did not look good then, unfortunately. But there is, of course, a big court case.
And not only did people in Pennsylvania believe in witches, a lot of people.
Lot
of people.
There's at least one
this book was all over the place. And there are powwowers, multiple powwowers in one town.
Yeah. So of course if you want to watch the documentary, they go over who gets what for jail sentences. They are all convicted, of course.
It's free on YouTube. It's a great documentary.
Yeah, some people go for a long while, some go for a little while. It was listening to the different lawyers and their discussions, how they try to get people off of to manslaughter, whatever. It was interesting to see, just all of that back less than 100 years ago. But anyway, so the media coverage picks this up, and it is just this huge obsession then for the United States, because the idea that folk magic and the supernatural are still happening in Pennsylvania, people this is the modern age. We already
this is the 20th century.
We already fought World War I. We're in the Roaring 20s. What is happening right now?
Yeah.
So anyway, they start getting all these labels for hex murders, and so at this point, it's interesting. All law enforcement officials, doctors, and educators, they all start working together to try and find all these superstitious and what they see as dangerous practices that are allowing for people to be killed. Because, if you take your 5-year-old John to a powwow doctor to fix malnutrition, and he's just praying over you and that's all it is, you're not going to heal them. And as I read last time, some of the stuff makes absolutely zero sense. So it's not going to help them survive. So there are stories about people who have children being killed. So you have all these people working together, and Pennsylvania looks even worse because not only is there this big, trial going on for a guy who was brutally murdered in his house by 3 people, but there are other strange cases. It says here, during the Rehmeyer murder trial, York County Coroner L.V. Zack claimed that the deaths of 5 children in the previous 2 years had been caused by powwowers. He said that the children's parents took them to folk healers when they were sick instead of real doctors, and as a result, they died. He did admit that there had been no formal investigations of the cases, but that they were a matter of common knowledge. So it's okay, the coroner knows this is happening, but no one's stopping it? I don't get that. 5 babies died because of you. You gotta stop it. But anyway, the New York Times actually picks up that story, and they discuss the death of 5 babies because of witch cult. So they get it wrong, of course, and sensationalize it because powwowers aren't a witch cult, But again, you have that.
But to an outsider,
I guess so. Yeah, I guess they would see. This.
Now that I've researched powwowing at least a little bit and everything, I know what they believe it is and all that. Still freaking looks like witchcraft to me.
Well, during all this too, like, you know how in rural Pennsylvania you look at the barns and there's like these really cool like circles that put pretty designs on them.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you're driving up to like Lycoming Mall, there's that big old circle on that one red barn on the right.
Yeah.
That's actually like from Lancaster. That's like Amish design. That's all these powwow ideas, and there are all these symbols on there to try and make sure you have a good harvest and healthy animals. So like I was looking into that research, kind of going down the rabbit hole. Like all those different designs, they're actually called hex designs. So the Amish may not like follow this depending on which article you're reading, but they're putting those up on their barns. So like they do believe in it a little bit. So I can see how to an outsider you think, okay, well, witches believe in those kinds of things like ritualistic hexes and whatnot. So I could see them using that term. But again, really more so just to sensationalize it. So poor Rehmeyer, of course, is murdered. His family is like never, well, I should say like the Blymyer family like never really gets over it. Like his wife, Lily, she goes on to live an okay life. But I mean, everyone is kind of traumatized by all of this. Now, of course, modern day, flash forward, you have is he the great-grandson of Nelson who's in charge of the house?
I think he's great-grandson, yeah.
You know, you have people reliving this story and like teaching it to others. You know, he has set up the house as basically like a museum. He dresses actually in Nelson Rehmeyer's clothes, which is kind of gross, but kind of cool. And of course, all the Blymyers, they have no problem talking about it. Like they agree that like John Blymyer was crazy. But the documentary also showcases that like there are modern day powwowers. They interview 2 of them.
Yeah, like, and you get to see a couple incantations or charms. I think they call one of them. You see, like one guy makes a protection charm, and he on a piece of paper he folds it up, and he's like, "Here, put this in your pocket, and nothing bad will happen to you."
And then another one does it on a paper plate or
on a plate with chocolate syrup.
And then he puts it in. You run the water over into a different company to drink it, and then
you drink the cup down. Yeah, he's like, some people chug it, some people sip it over a day. You know, whatever. But yeah,
chocolate. I mean, cool. Chocolate
syrup. It made me think of, in Catholicism there are these paintings called icons, and they're visually very odd looking paintings. I believe like they all have a certain style to them, and I find them very interesting but odd. And when you are painting them, you're supposed to be actively praying the entire
whole time. Yeah,
you're painting them. And that's how this is. Like, when this guy is doing the chocolate syrup thing on the paint, he's actively focusing and, like, you know,
he's
praying as he's applying all these symbols onto the plate. And then as he's pouring the water over, you know, into the cup, you know, that has to be, like, very gentle, very, you know.
You have to wash all of the design off into the next cup of water. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you mentioned Catholicism again. Like we have all these different religions we have our own beliefs. So and powwowing kind of came out of, you know, like the Protestant section of faith, that the Amish and the Mennonites, that like the Anabaptists, I guess.
But firmly based in Christianity.
Yeah, and they still use like Catholic. You mentioned like iconography. They mentioned you know the Virgin Mary and all the saints. And actually, one of the powwowers was talking.
Cross.
Yeah, they were talking about her, and they used her like in one of the prayers, like when they were talking. So it's interesting how they have like kind of melded different religions together.
How about the headache cure?
I would just take some Tylenol. Yeah, just throw it away. Our listeners can't see you.
You gotta watch the documentary. Yeah, he
take your hand. You kind of, and you like almost like you're brushing your hair down in front of your face. You pull it down to your nose and in front of your face, and you grab it and you throw it away.
Yeah,
you imagine
you're grabbing your aura.
Headache. Yeah, and you're tossing
and like
it.
There's because the way one of the powwowers says, he's like, for laying on of hands, you don't actually touch anyone, and just the term laying on of hands is like Catholicism,
yeah,
you know, and Christianity, well, like.
But anyways, it's definitely Pentecostal.
Yeah, but anyways, you know, like they trace like the top of your head, grab this imaginary like outer layer of your face, and then pull it off of your, you know, body or aura.
Toss it. What happens? Like if you toss it away, does it go on somebody else? Did you like inadvertently hex somebody else? I was like, no, what if you pull your headache off and you toss it into the world?
I thought it just got dissipated into nature. Is how
I hope so. Otherwise, like, imagine you're sitting to my right and a boom, headache, bam. You feel bad. But they also say that if you are the powwower, you have to have a really high constitution because you're taking that onto yourself, right? So do you get the headache?
No, because he's not like bringing it into himself. He's just tossing it away.
Also, if you get constant headaches, you want to go to a powwower, please go to a doctor. You could have many things wrong with you.
Yeah.
You could have migraines.
Seek
you could
real
have
medicine,
eye
please.
issues. Yeah, you could have
again,
sinus
let me
issues.
echo from last week. Don't be Steve Jobs. One of his dying phrases was that he wished he had seen a real doctor earlier.
Yeah.
We might still have Steve Jobs if he had just seen a doctor.
That's true. All right, so back to these guys then. So, the word witchcraft is being used, but Blymyer and Curry both are sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder, but Hess is only given 10 to 20 years for second-degree murder because of how his lawyer, fought the discussion of, what it was, how to kill somebody, that kind of stuff. Now, Blymyer's sentence was eventually commuted, and both Curry and Hess were paroled, so they didn't spend life in prison. All right? But before we go into the other examples of hex murders and hex issues, I'd like to take a jaunt down Kyle Lane here and get his creepy thought.
Alrighty.
About last week's episode.
Let's hear what he has to say.
I think one of the people.
I thought it would be a good idea if we turned Shannon into the girl. I thought it would be a good idea if we. I thought it would be a good idea. I thought it would be a good idea into the girl from Ringu.
This is bad. This is really bad.
It's Ouija.
I'll never not laugh.
Nope. When it comes to hexery or powwow medicine, I don't put a whole lot of stock in it. Thank you, Kyle. However, if you think about it, these traditions aren't much different from most of the things that a majority of people believe in today. If you've ever knocked on wood or thrown salt over your shoulder, if you're like me and have had an iron horseshoe hanging above your door, if you open doors and windows or cover the mirrors when there's a death in the family, you've practiced hexery. Or if you, like Laura and Ray, have smudged your home or bodies, you practiced a potent form of magic. A magic passed down from indigenous peoples. In the end, we're all magicians arguing over whose magic scares away the evil in the dark. Meanwhile, the dark things out there might just be waiting for the night that you lose faith in your personal hex.
Boogie, boogie, boogie. I love that ending.
That's a good
Super
ending.
creepy.
That's a really good ending.
You guys fight over who's better. I'll just be hanging out here waiting for you. Mm-hmm. Is that good?
I just picture like the Grim Reaper looking at his watch like,
How many more minutes do I get them fighting over what? All right, time to go. Let's go.
Chop chop.
I agree with him. I don't put much faith in powwowing. I do think that there are medicinal cures, and it's like mom's drink. It'll get you drunk, but it also
you'll feel better.
feel better. But it will suppress your cough. There's honey in there, which is, a natural antifungal, and it's good to coat your throat to get rid of all the sore stuff. So,
lots of spices to open up your senses.
Yeah. So, I think it's a great drink. I would like it, minus the gross flavor.
Except for the taste.
Yeah. And there's things you're supposed to drink the day after drinking too much to cure your hangover. Some of those work really well, some of them do not. So I do put a lot of stock in those things.
And even little kids like Eli right now, his big thing is what should you drink after eating a hot wing, and all that.
Not water. So I think there's truth in that, but I don't put much stock in powwow medicine in general, because the idea that you're going to rub a potato over someone's wart and get rid of the wart to me is kind of weird.
Yeah.
I didn't discuss it last time. There were lots of random things that they would do to cure issues like that.
It all just feels kind of childish too. There's the one powwower who had was it a lock of hair or something? He thought he was being hexed by someone, so he had something wrapped in a piece of paper and tied shut. And he's like, I'll never get rid of this, because then the hex will come back. And it's okay. Do you want a cookie now? Or something?
I want a cookie now.
I'm sorry to anyone who believes in this. I just can't. I just can't.
I think
which is interesting, because I believe in demons and ghosts and
but that's our religion. So what Kyle's saying there is we're all fighting over who's the right person, who's not.
Yeah.
I think there's truth in everything, but I think if you delve too far into certain things, drink too much of the Kool-Aid, bad things are going to happen.
For sure.
So again, the fact that in last week's discussion was, don't tell your real doctor you're seeing a hex doctor or a powwower, because then they might get angry. Yeah. Oh, and like if it doesn't work after 6-7 times, well, you don't have enough faith in Jesus. No, I have cancer. I don't know. So there are times when there are times. So I agree with you, Kyle. I agree. Yeah. I think the death is just sitting there going, all right, I'm just giving you 5 more minutes. Okay, here we go.
Oh, they believe in powwow. They're on the express checkout, I see.
Express. Oh my gosh. So anyway, after the York witch trials, as it became known, all right, which is crazy. So after that, all of these different hex stories start popping up.
Okay.
So one was actually labeled a hex murder. It was in March of 1929, and her name was Verna Delp. Yeah.
Okay.
Quite the name, yes.
All these names that just don't exist anymore.
Rural Pennsylvania, baby. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, so in March of 1929, her body was discovered in the woods of Catasauqua near Allentown, and she was 21.
All right.
Okay. On her body were 3 pieces of paper with magical charms written on them, supposedly to protect from murder and theft. So yeah, you find her body, and she's got charms on it. A coroner...
That didn't work.
Oops. The coroner's report identifies 3 poisons in her body as well, and it appears that she had taken them voluntarily. So yeah, you trust
Drink
that powwower. Yeah. Her adoptive father, August Durhammer, revealed to the police that he had recently learned that Verna was taking treatments from a powwower and that she'd been planning on visiting him the day that she died. So, yes, the powwower was named Charles T. Bells, and he was arrested thanks to the fact that the police were sure he had done this, and they had another hex murder on their hands. So I kind of feel bad for him. If it wasn't him, like, oh, you're a powwower, it's got to be you. Hello, modern day witchcraft, like, the hunting down of witches.
Yeah.
Again, less than 100 years ago in rural Pennsylvania, this is happening.
This is 1928, right?
29 now. We're in 29. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, again, less than 100. Yeah. So anyway, at first he denies that he was treating her, but later he admits that he was helping her with her eczema. Not giving her lotions, giving her poisons instead, I guess. He claimed only to be a faith healer, not a hex.
Can't have bad skin if you don't have skin.
Oh my. Your skin can't be itchy if you are dead and
if you can't feel it.
Oh my. So he's like, I'm just a faith healer. I'm not a hex doctor. Those are different. I didn't hex her. I just used my faith to heal her. Again, there's a difference, right?
Define heal.
Anyway, the cops don't believe him, as like we're making fun of this. But the thing is, like, they can't find any evidence to like link him to this crime, but they hold him anyway. I think it's interesting.
Because that's legal.
Yeah, well, back then it was. But anyway, as the investigation continues, they learn that Verna may have been pregnant, and she had not seen her boyfriend, a truck driver named Masters, for several months. She had not yet told her family of her situation. Maybe she was looking for a way to end her pregnancy.
Yeah.
This is before like modern abortion, I would say, right?
That would explain the poisons, I guess.
Yeah. So they have that going on. Also, it came to light that the police just believed that it was Bells still. Even though we have the background of Masters, her being pregnant out of wedlock. Mm-hmm. No. It has to be this guy.
Yeah.
Because they have this obsession, right, with hexes and curses. So they ignore all the possibilities like a botched abortion attempt or suicide or murder by someone other than Bells. Mm-hmm. By April, they have no evidence, so they finally have to let him go, but they decide to charge him anyway. Even though they have zero evidence to let him go, they charge him. He does receive a hearing in mid-April, and from there, he is released on a $10,000 bail, which this is 1929, so oof.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now, the charges were eventually dropped, and the murder of Verna Delp was never solved. And there's more to that story, like the thought that maybe the guy who got her pregnant wanted her dead because he didn't want to deal with that responsibility.
Yeah.
And they just kind of like planted all that stuff on her body to make it look like a hex doctor had gone after her because the witch trials had just happened, right? There was discussion that, he could have given her a drink that had poison and she didn't realize it was poisoned, of course, which killed her. But I mean, that's how bad it was with all of the hex beliefs. They were like, we gotta get all these people from killing people. So then we jump forward to January of 1930. So a little less than a year later, Mrs. Harry McDonald is 34. She's a housewife from Reading. She dies after receiving severe burns in her own home. Do you want to know how she did it?
How?
She had apparently been given some ointment from a hex doctor with instructions to rub it on her skin. At some point in the night, her body went up in flames when she got too close to her stove.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so whatever was in the ointment made her light on fire. Yep, she was seriously injured, and when her husband, who worked the night shift, found her in the morning, she was on the verge of death and had been laying there for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yes, she could not be saved. Of course, she does pass away. Yeah.
It's a little more than seriously injured.
And that's awful, right? Yeah. The woman's brother then tells reporters that he believed the lotion she was using was very flammable, of course, and caught fire, killing his sister. He had no evidence, but the press latched on to that. And, of course, that had the occult connections for a long time. Another hex panic murder occurred on January 20th, 1932. It was the body of a Philadelphian man named Norman Bechtel. He was 31. He was discovered in Germantown under a tree. And it was on like a temporarily vacant estate. So they're kind of all alone. He was an accountant and a Mennonite church worker. Obviously, he then believes in, hexes and that because he's from that section.
That heritage, yeah.
Yep. But he had 9 stab wounds in and around his heart.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. Some of the wounds appeared to form the shape of a circle and were delivered with such a force that they were not only penetrating through his suit and coat, but his eyeglass case in his pocket as well.
Oh, my God.
Like, it was really stabbed in there, yeah. There was a crescent-shaped cut, too, on each side of his forehead, and then a vertical slash from his hairline to his nose. Right?
Because at first I was like, well, all the stabs around the heart, like, if you're going to...
try and kill somebody.
Yeah, you're just going to aim for the torso.
Yeah.
But the face stuff kind of puts the rest of it into perspective.
It's interesting. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's different.
And then there were 2 additional cuts that actually ran off from the vertical slashes in the direction of the crescent cuts. So, like, there was more on his face to give him this weird, shape. Yeah. All of his valuables, by the way, had been taken, and his car was later discovered 6 miles away. So, could have been a murder. Cover up with the hex kind of thing, right? From the blood stains in the automobile, though, it was clear that he had known his attacker well enough to let him or her into his car. The case gave all the appearances of a robbery gone bad, but there were those pesky facial cuts.
Yeah, that shows a lot more than...
Yep. So they of course, the cops latch onto hex murdering again. Oh, no. Yeah, which is crazy. So with that being said, it was learned, too, that he had grown up on a farm near Boyertown. And that's where, that's still, that today, like, that is a very common area to have powwow practicing going on. They start looking for evidence over there. Captain Harry Heenley, the chief investigator, had the victim's apartment searched for any possible connection, but all they found were Mennonite books and pamphlets. So not even the long-lost friend. But even with that, they still kept calling it a hex murder.
Yeah.
Because why not? Now we're going to go to April 1937. So just a couple of years later.
Okay.
William Jordan, 36, confessed that he and 4 others had killed Bechtel when they had been attempting to blackmail him. Most of the details of Jordan's confession were not publicly released, as Bechtel had been involved in several love affairs. So being a Mennonite still didn't really help. He was quite the man.
Yeah.
And he had a large life insurance policy. Needless to say, this murder had nothing to do with hexes, but still got lumped in with that hexing. And it took like 5 years to find the culprits because they admitted the deed. Otherwise, it would have been labeled a hex murder forever. So what I like about this is you have that like mass, and I was just listening to last podcast, and I was like, hey, this fits us. That mass hysteria moment where like you just believe whatever's happening and you latch onto it. So it doesn't matter if it's 1692. It doesn't matter if it's, the 1300s over in Europe. You latch onto that mass hysteria and you start to believe it. You start drinking the Kool-Aid kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so because they assumed it was powwow related, they labeled it, and therefore they didn't allow themselves to be open to any other possibility, like, an actual murder of friends.
Yep.
Right, which is, anyway. So last true hex murder that actually happened in Pennsylvania, though. It occurred in Pottsville, all right, Schuylkill County. I love reading these words because I feel so smart, and then I think anybody who's not from Pennsylvania, they're like, you got the word Schuylkill out of that? You can pronounce it that way? I love our words.
Tunkhannock. Schuylkill.
Catasauqua, again, that one. I just read that earlier.
Oh, yeah.
So they're easy for us. It rolls right off the tongue, but you're not from
Or even
here.
just Troop.
Forgot about Troop.
Because it's spelled Throop.
Throop, yeah. Anyway, so March 17th, 1934, a shot...
St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, right. but it's also the Ides of March. A shotgun blast ended the life of Mrs. Susan Mummy, 63, as it tore through her living room window while she was standing next to her adopted daughter. Shotgun gets her. So someone was shooting like from outside, aims through the window, and gets her. That's
tough to do with a shotgun.
It's easy to do when you're a hunter. This story I find quite fascinating.
Shotgun. All shotguns do is just shoot BBs. You know, like lots of BBs, but so from far away, those BBs are pretty spread out by the time they get to you.
Well, and like again, she's next to her adopted daughter, but there's also one of her boarders because she runs a boarding house. So it says here, she was attending to the injured foot of her boarder, Jacob Bryce, who was seated in front of her. The oil lamp that her daughter was holding shattered as the shot tore through the window. So yeah, they're going everywhere, but only Mummy got killed. The other two, they took cover, not knowing if morgue shots were going to come, obviously. Yeah. They waited all night in fear. So there, the mother is dead on the ground. And they're just hiding in that room all night out of fear. So as morning approached, Rice decides to go look. Then he takes a 2.5-mile trip to Ringtown to report the crime. Because again, this is rural Pennsylvania, 1934. Mm-hmm. No, it was less than 100 years ago, but it was Pennsylvania. It's rural. So the police thought the murder was a result of some backwoods feud that turned violent. You know, like, Hatfields and McCoys kind of thing. Nope. It took a bizarre turn when Albert Shinsky, 24, confessed to the killing. So he comes forward and confesses. He claimed that the killing had been in self-defense and that Mummy had placed a hex on him 7 years earlier when he was working in a field across from the Mummy farm. I was hexed for 7 years because of her. I was 17 years old and she got me. Yeah. So I had to kill her because of that hex.
It's a long time to
hold a grudge. Yeah. I mean, to be hexed is probably a long time too. Anyway, I guess there had been a dispute over property lines. And one day, Mrs. Mummy came over the fence and stared at him for a long time. Freaked him out. And he claimed that he felt cold perspiration come over him. And his arms went limp from her staring at him. From that point on, he was unable to work. It was sheer torture. Seriously.
I've been hexed. Oh no.
Some old lady stared at me too long. I gotta stay home
tomorrow. Yeah, go on without me.
But what, again, at the age of 17, like we already know this from our mental health training as teachers, like that's when you start having these mental health problems they start showing up in your teenage years because your brain is going through changes, you're getting new hormones in your body. So a lot of schizophrenia can actually show up at the age of 12, 13, depending, right?
Puberty.
So, yeah. So he claimed that whenever he saw a sharp object, it would change into the shape of a black cat. Not unlike our kitty cat Binks here in the house, but it had flaming eyes too, and he could not look away. So if he saw a knife, blah, cat, can't stop watching it. The cat also appeared to him.
What's the logic behind this?
I don't know, but there's more to it.
Okay.
Sometimes it would appear to him when he was in bed at night. It would creep slowly across the room and jump onto his bed. It probably was a real cat, but Anyway.
If it's only sharp objects, that means a walking knife was waddling around on the bed, right?
Apparently the appearance of this cat made him get cold. That perspiration would kind of happen again, but he would have to get up and run around the room to get warm again because he was so ice cold from it. He sought help from several powwowers, but nothing worked. His family thought he was lying and was just too lazy to work. Could be. Honestly, yeah. But no.
The thought hadn't crossed my mind at all.
I know, right? He genuinely believed that he was cursed and that he had to get rid of it. So he decides it has to be her, and he decides to kill her because once she's gone, guess what? The curse is gone. So prosecutors wanted to give him the death penalty for the murder, but the press once again emphasized the danger of believing in things like powwow medicine. So even over all the objections of the police and the prosecutors and a commissioner of doctors, this one section of doctors said, no, he's insane. Let's take him to Fairview State Hospital, not Harrisburg State Hospital.
Oh, that's good.
He remained in that mental institution for most of the rest of his life. He does transfer to a different one at one point, but whatever. He is insane. So he is labeled as insane and he is committed for the rest of his life. Which is a good thing if it's a decent hospital. We should now do a whole different thing on the Fairview State Hospital and see if it's anything like Pennhurst and Harrisburg. Probably yes.
There's another one, too, that's nearby that we can do out near State College.
We should also do Eastern State, like I said. That's June.
Oh yeah, we're definitely going to that.
Oh, we're definitely, yeah. It's happening. I already checked the prices. I'm ready to go. So anywho, so that was the last true hex murder. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to put in context, well less than 100 years ago, because that was the latter half of the 1930s. So we're talking like, that's like pre-World War II, sure, but only by a couple of years. People still have powwow doctors today. They're in the documentary. It's crazy. Don't believe in something so much that you're going to go shoot a person, because that guy could have killed all 3 of those people, but only killed one person. He was a good shot.
Yeah, right.
But good Lord. So anyway, the modern day hex house. It still sits there. Obviously, it's being run by family members. It is a museum. It displays his life, his murder, all the books, all that kind of stuff.
His shotgun.
Shotgun?
They take a lot of time to showcase that shotgun in the video.
I think it's cool. They still have like the house is furnished with his like original belongings too. Like it's cool.
Yeah.
Of course, they mentioned the portion of the floor is covered with glass with those like LED light strips to make it look really cool. Yeah, that's interesting. But there are stories of it being haunted. So this is why I wanted to, because they're the haunting of it, right? Mm-hmm. They don't discuss this in the documentary.
No, this is not. That documentary is not about
ghosts
or anything like that. This is. It more showcases like, because right now it's a museum of not even about the Rehmeyers. It's a museum about life in the late 1800s. Yeah. That's what it showcases.
Early 1900s.
Both, a little bit of both. Like they have like big scythes hanging on the wall and things like that. You know, the shotgun house. With the original shells, like in their little paper packaging. Yeah. So that's really what they wanted to talk about, was the history of it and all that, and they completely ignore all the paranormal aspects of it.
Yes. So the house, if you talk to community residents, they'll tell you that you can see shadowy figures that are lurking around the property when no one's there. And they're stealthy. Yes. So these figures, and they don't think it's just like Rehmeyer. It could be like the 3 men there too. Because they're kind of like stealthing around the house trying to find a way in. And it's very obvious that there's this outline. Like you can see this dark, shadowy figure that's kind of like walking. And there's multiple ones of them. Others state that if you throw rocks or pebbles at the house, they get thrown back at you. I think that's cool.
How'd they figure that out? Like, who's throwing rocks at this house?
Well, let's go try it out. The house is there. Let's go get some pebbles. Let's see what happens. But also, you can hear disembodied voices. They've been recorded too.
Oh.
Which I think is cool. And that's in the forest surrounding the home. So it's not just the house, it's the forest area too. And there's also a black dog with red eyes that has been spotted roaming the property. Which is
not a black cat with red eyes.
No. But in some of my research, there was a story of a person who thought he was hexed, and it was after he had accidentally murdered somebody. And so for years, he thought that this black thing was following him. And he was hexed by the person's, like, you know, soul. And that's supposed to be a symbol of, like, death. Like, that's coming to get you. It's stalking you, right? Yeah. So it's interesting to see that there is this dog, because if it's a dog with red eyes, it's supposed to symbolize death, but it's there on the property. So it's just fascinating to me. So creepy, shadowy figures, rocks getting tossed, you had disembodied voices, a creepy dog. Very, very haunted. And I like it. But that's all I got for you in terms of its hauntedness.
Yeah.
Do you think it's haunted?
I could see it being haunted, but I don't know. I feel like there would be more accounts of it other than just... Well, I mean, they only just opened up the museum too, so who knows, in a couple of years when we have more people, like outsiders, to account any stories that they might experience, I think that's a good time to make a decision on that. Let's
go trespass and walk through the
there
woods.
We go. Yep, that's it.
No way is that bad.
That's the answer.
Trespassing with EVP recording. That's fine. And I feel sad too. Like, if those shadowy figures are like the 3 men who killed Rehmeyer, and like their souls are like kind of trapped there, reliving it, or if it's like a residual thing, okay. But if it's like an intelligent, like they're stuck there, I just feel kind of bad for them.
Yeah,
you know, they murdered somebody. I shouldn't say I feel bad for them that way. But you know what I mean? Like, I just
like, if they still feel hexed and they feel like they didn't get rid of it, so they're still trying to remove it from
or if
themselves.
They feel so much guilt now from having killed him, they can't move on. The guilt is something like that also makes me sad. So, because Nelson was a good guy, you know. He'd probably be like, you know, after a while, he'd probably like, you know, you're forgiven. I could see him like, you know, forgiving based on the stories that they've told about him.
Well, define a while for eternity. I mean,
that's true.
It could only be a couple seconds for him, and so he might, you know, they might be waiting for a little bit.
I'm still mad at you. Do not come in this house. The answer's no. I will not serve you tea. No breakfast for you.
So yeah, I mean, if that's the case, yeah, they could just be waiting for forgiveness.
Yeah. Like your favorite show. When one person stuck outside the church can't go in.
Yeah. Minimal spoilers, but the ending of Lost is freaking awesome.
It's very intelligent.
Yes.
So then, why the black dog? Because death already happened. So is it symbolic that death happened here?
I think so, yeah.
An unnatural
Just
death.
this bad omen that kind of walks the land kind of deal.
I do want to say that if Blymyer believed he had a hex, he went to jail. So murdering a dude is not going to stop the hex. You know, bad things are going to continue to come your way. Murder is not the
Probably
answer.
worse things. I mean, I think living with the hex would have been better than jail.
If he had gone to an actual doctor and like actually had sought some help, maybe he would have gotten some medicine to help with all of that. It's very sad. So people, please go to your doctor. If you're feeling weird, talk to your doctor. Not a hex doctor, not a powwow faith healer.
Speak to your doctor before starting a new medicine.
As
all the commercials say.
Oh, but that's all I have for Hex Hollow. That's all I got. 2-parter.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I kind of want to visit, but like
it's pretty close to us.
It is. I'm just not sure. Like, yeah, the museum has like a hayride too, goes around the land.
Oh, because I forgot to mention that happened over Thanksgiving. It was the end of November 26th or 28th.
Yeah.
So like when they say Thanksgiving down there, they go, oh yeah, the hex murders. Like, yeah, that's the first thing that pops up in their head. Not like, you know, pumpkin pie. They're thinking like, oh, murder. So it's right on the time when you're gonna have hay rides and pumpkins.
Yeah. So it would be a neat thing to see. If you live in Pennsylvania, take a trip down that way.
Yep, because they had issues like with COVID. They wanted to open, then the COVID happened.
Yeah.
But now it is officially opened, and hay rides and pumpkins and oogie boogie 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 boogies. That's all I got.
Okay.
I'm sick. That's the best I got. Shut up. All right. Well, anyway, what are we discussing next, do you think?
I would like to do Eastern State.
But that's not until June.
That's not till June? We're waiting?
Lauren, you're going to help us with that.
Okay.
I have lots of research. So much research. You know what we should do is ask our listeners, because if you got to this part in our podcast here, we have hit over 5,000 downloads for the Well House Exorcism alone.
Yep.
So we're going to hold a giveaway again. Woohoo! You're going to get a magnet for your car. You're going to get a t-shirt. And you're going to get a really cool button. I'm not going to say what it is. It's a secret button. Some cool stuff coming. Some free merch. I'm dancing. It's exciting.
Only to the United States, though, because I'm sorry for any all of our listeners out there, but when we did our Wingspan giveaway, you know, we shipped a $40 game and a $20 tote, and it was like $150 to ship it. So we just can't do overseas shipping, everyone. So it has to be in the United States.
The giveaway is exciting though. So you can hop on to gamesoverboard.com and hit our contact button. You can email us at gamesoverboard@gmail.com or hop on Facebook. Well, I'll actually have the picture up starting on Monday.
Yeah.
We're recording well before that.
Yeah.
So you can see it. We'll have it live for a week, and we will get our actual winner at the next podcast episode. So when you're on there, you can tell us what you want to hear next.
Yes. Yeah, please. We want to hear from you.
Please talk.
We've only had one person message us on Facebook. And
he's going to go to the bunkers. Very exciting.
We're going to go too once it gets warmer. I really want to go there.
I want to get all his... I told him he should come on here with his EVPs. We'll invite him to our house.
That'd be awesome.
Yep. Our listener, Tim, who messaged us, when you're at the bunkers and we discussed that, we got to discuss Eastern State, because I want to know if you've done EVP work there, because I think you'd find that fascinating. So hop on Facebook, Tim, and like the picture and put your name in for the running, because I want to send you a t-shirt. You deserve it. If he wins, it's going to
messages us.
He's on on Facebook, obviously. But wouldn't it be cool if he actually won? Like you won Eric
Party
Lawrence.
wanted.
Party wanted. Like randomly. I love when things like just happenstance happen. All right. Well, anyway, back to thank you, Kyle. I want to say, Tim, you would love listening to Liminal Unlimited. It's our brother-in-law and sister-in-law's podcast. It's all about creepy cryptids and stuff. I think you'd find it quite fascinating. So hop on that too. So shout out to Tim if you're listening. But that's all I got for this evening because I am sick and I need your mom's drink.
Yes.
So I shall probably just take some Benadryl and go to bed. But you know.
Yeah, that too.
Take 2 Benadryl. Call me in the morning. Well, anyway, everybody, have a lovely evening. It was nice talking to you. Hope you enjoyed learning about hexes and power medicine. Have a fantastic evening and a fantastic week.